Welcome back to the Soapbox. New venue here in the kitchen. Hopefully my wife doesn't get too upset with me, but did some cleaning, so we should be good. So I wanted to take some time to introduce a topic, which is something I've always wanted to talk about. It's going to be more than one episode, but it's essentially my life story. And it's always hard for me to talk about because first, it's obviously very personal, but two, I struggle to feel that, I'm talking about myself, my life. I'm only, 32 years old. It's not like my life is, even half lived, hopefully. But I know people have always, shown interest in sort of my journey to where I've gotten to today. And it's less of where I've gotten to today and more or less what I overcame in previous years. And so it takes me some time to emotionally get over that. I'm doing something that hopefully you guys want to listen to. The way I'll rock and roll with this is it'll be a bunch of episodes. I'll try to keep it under 20 minutes a piece. It won't happen in succession just because, if something comes up where I have a good guest, I'll bring it on there. So I don't want to, upset you guys if, give you a cliffhanger or anything like that, but it'll take some time to get through. So if you have questions or about certain aspects of it as well, we can always backtrack before we kind of dive deeper. So let me know as we go through. But, I think, where to start in a life story. This is not, because it's not like, I was born in 1987 type of deal. No, I think basically for most of you that know me, of where I am in life now, I've been in the world of CrossFit for about 10 years. And that's really where most of you that follow me, that I'm friends with, that I've met, that I've put through seminars, I've competed with, that have watched me compete, whatever it might be, that I've worked with, that I've coached with. That's how I've met you, through CrossFit. And gosh, it's been life changing. And in a small pond, that has, people know who I am, and I think that's something that has heightened my life story and what it looks like, because that's how everyone knows me. Everyone I started doing CrossFit in 2009, went to the CrossFit Games in 2010. So, and then media exploded, years after that. So what does everyone know from me is just from competing, and then, the way of life and what I am. And, in the very, for the first 5 or 6 years, just unbelievably diligent and strict for nutrition and training and not like I'm not now, but I mean, that was something that I was known for. And so these things start to paint a picture of who I am and what I do, and now from not only from a competitive perspective, but transitioning from 100% competitor to now I have a daughter, I'm married, I have multiple businesses, and I do multiple things within the world of CrossFit, from coaching seminars to running gyms to owning different seminars to programming. So what I do from a business perspective, these are what people know about me. And I was not always like this, and my path was not this clear ever, and nor is my path clear now. But I definitely have a purpose. I'm purpose driven. I have a way of life in which I try to lead, and it's derived on values, and that's not something I always had. And as I look back, there's a few key moments in my life, and again, I'm not going to give you the fully detailed piece of every single part of my life. I think it might be a little boring, but I think that the biggest thing is I was a disgruntled youth. I got in a lot of trouble. I got sent away. And from being in trouble with the law to you name it, and all of these things that happened to me, and making mistake after mistake after mistake, essentially trying to, and pushing away more and more people that cared about me. And at some point and then hitting a turning point. And because what are most people interested is like, well, what was that turning point? How did you do it? And then how do you help others with that? And I struggle with that a lot. I'm in the process of writing a book, and by in the process, I think I'm year four in, working with a writer and trying to get this thing published. It's not the easiest thing in the world, the way I want to do it, but trying to be patient with it as well. And that's the biggest question. Like, well, what are you going to tell someone? And that was in a similar scenario, or the parents of children that were in similar scenario. And gosh, like I've racked my brain thinking about this for so long of what that was and what it is. And I don't know if I have a specific answer, but I'll try to highlight some things that stick out in my mind. But, I think I have a sister. She's 3 years older than I am. I have a half brother who's 11 years younger than I am. So it's a little, that timeline entered in later. And if I were to look back on it, it was, life was relatively normal. And then if there was an impetus to where things started to change, that my parents got separated and divorced when I was 8 years old. And then kind of looking at that point, there were a lot of things that happened after that fact, where in the moment you have no idea what's happening. But that was a clear piece where things for me started to spiral. And it's not, and again, I don't want to it's not, you don't blame something, but there's a catalyst, there's a fork in the road, and you have to do something. And that's a moment. And the reason, and I've done a lot of thinking about this, it's not like I just kind of throw it out there. Well, that was it. Because as I fast forward through and give you this summary of my life story, then we'll backtrack. It's all right. So at 8 years old, my parents got divorced, and then from there, as I transitioned, into figuring out who to live with, and then just, running away from one house to another, playing, pitting one parent against another, hearing my parents argue, why do I have different places to live? And then, doing what a lot of probably divorced kids, look for is all right, well, which parent do I want to live with? Who's got better rules? And then there, obviously your parents are struggling to figure that whole scenario out. And then, really started to go down a path of, my sister's 3 years older than I am. She had a lot more rights than I did. And I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but she was able to choose where she could live and who she could live with, and I couldn't. I'll never forget that. It really pissed me off. And then I hated that. So then I tried to take control in any way I could, whether it be running away or being defiant, but I just didn't like not being able to choose. And then my sister did. And over time, I actually started to befriend a lot of my sister's friends who were 3 years older than I am. And as you kind of think back, it's funny because 3 years older now, it's like I have people, or younger, it's not a big deal. It's 35, that's 29. It's a difference that does not matter. But when you're 14 and they're 17, when you're 15 and they're 18, these are age differences that really do matter from what people and kids are actually doing. So basically, I just started hanging out with a lot of these kids that were older than I am. It's not that they were bad kids. I think they were just doing what kids do at that age, and maybe not the most upstanding citizens, but by no means full-on degenerates. But when you're 15 doing that, that's different than when you're 18, right? And so essentially, when I, in being that young and being 15 years old or 14, whatever it might be, I was always trying to impress, always trying to make it feel like I belong here, right? And which we still do to this day in certain crowds when we're with people and you're with people that you feel like you might not belong, or you're trying to belong. But gosh, when you're a kid, it's even more. It's like the social stigma of I got to be cool. How do I be cool? I have to earn. I have to prove my keep. So it was doing whatever it might be, whether we were partying, drinking, whatever it might be, just always trying to keep up, but then also stand out, because that's what you do. You have to make sure that they don't look at you as the young idiot kid. They look at you as oh, this kid belongs, and trying to earn your keep. And you can obviously see how that led to and leads to a lot of problems from a behavioral perspective. What I mean by that is if you're partying and drinking, you're trying to be the coolest guy in the room. That leads to you being the drunkest or doing the most stupid thing, and just did a lot of really stupid things. And I had a good examples. I went to private school, went to pre-private school in Connecticut. And then from there, and I was playing football, hockey, and lacrosse. It was great. And then from there, I got accepted into a private school in Williston, Northampton, which is out in Western Mass, which is really cool. I was playing hockey. I was on the hockey team. I made, as a freshman, I was on the varsity hockey team. It was really cool stuff. And I lived there, I was boarding. And then, of course, I had all my friends at home that I was hanging out with in the summer, blah, blah, blah. And then I heard and saw about all they were doing. And I just made it my life's mission to leave that school, because I was like, well, I don't want to have to be told when to go to bed in dorm life or whatever it might be. In prep school, it's a lot different than college, where it's essentially you have, the rules are obviously more strict. And so I essentially, tricked or conned or just wore my parents down to the point where I could then I got brought home to go back to public school. And, looking back, I had an opportunity to, play multiple varsity sports in a private school and have all these cool opportunities. And I was like, and none of that obviously crossed my mind. I was like, I want more freedom. I want to party more. I want to be able to, just do whatever I need to do. And so I went home and gosh, that's just little things like I was a punk and I was like dyeing my hair all sorts of colors. And I just remember my dad told me, it's like, hey, just don't dye your hair multiple colors before school. Keep your hair one color. And this was before private school, before I went to Wilson for my freshman year. And of course, the night before, I dyed my hair blonde and blue, and he picked me up. And knowing that and this was how messed up and awful I was, knowing that he was going to bring me to school anyway. He wasn't going to not bring me to school. And it was just this power play and that I would do. And, it's, you look back and I'm just, you get so disappointed in how you behave and what you do. And, so, and that's an example, by no means not the only one, but of type of kid I was, right? That was me. I repeated my freshman year. So technically going to my sophomore year of high school and just doing things, whatever I could to defy my parents. And from a control perspective, you're going to tell me not to do it? I'm going to do it. And then, I'm at private school and it's a great opportunity, but there's too many rules. Great. I don't want to do it. And then wearing my parents down to the point, great, now I go to public school. And then, in public school is really where it started to spiral. And gosh, it's like, why? I was smart enough to know that I could get by and not have to do much. Private school and prep school were a lot different. I knew how to not go to class, to skip classes. I knew how to, sneak out of the house, all these things. And I was also smart enough to, figure out how to get enough grades to not raise any, red flags. And, it's, as I look at that year, because it was my junior year, and it became a constant, all I was doing was just partying and doing this or doing that. And, I embodied a defiant kid. I just did anything that I wasn't supposed to do. And it was funny because I was still working, right? And this is what's weird was that, as I look back, I still have these shreds of sort of like my character, which I still carry true today. Where I was working construction in the summer, which was, hard work, learning. I was also working at a gas station as an attendant. And I was, still going to school. So I was doing all of these things where it wasn't like I was a complete waste of life, but I was smart enough to know, all right, I want to make money. I want to work. I'm okay with hard work. I didn't say this, but I was doing things. I was working harder than a lot of my friends from the perspective of what I was doing and making good money as a kid working construction. You don't get better than that, and I would still go to work whether I was hungover or still messed up from the night before like a true idiot, but I would still do these things. And, I never thought about it now because I'm like, man, I was one of the only kids that was actually doing that. And now kind of looking back and reflecting, it's like, all right, cool. There are some parts of my character that I didn't fully, shit on, my whole life. And I did, was able to carry through a lot of the struggles. And as I went through into my summer before senior year, I made a lot of decisions. I was playing football. I was supposed to go to this football camp, because for the varsity team, that's voluntarily stuff. And I decided, I just remember, not going to it because, it just didn't fit, we were just literally just partying all, and it was on the weekend or whatever it might be. And I remember that because it was these moments that led me to, we were, always going to house parties and stuff like that. And then, the moment that that forever changed my life was when, I was at a party and I got in trouble there, and I don't know what I can and can't say on a podcast. I don't know those rules, but needless to say, I wanted to show everyone how tough I was. I was not in the right state of mind, and I made a decision that changed the course of my life forever. I was 17 years old. It was at the end of the summer, technically going into my senior year. And I just remember barefoot, jeans, no shirt, sitting in the back of a car that wasn't mine, with my hands behind my back, and, with lights flashing everywhere and chaos going on. And there I was just sitting there and afraid and scared. And then later that night, I just, getting picked up by my dad as I was, in a cold, dark room that I wasn't allowed to leave from, and with no shoes on. It was a cold floor, and I just remember his face looking at me and how disappointed he looked in me, and that's a look that unfortunately I was going to see in the future a few more times, but it's a look I'll never forget. And I just knew at that moment, one, I was fortunate he was there, and that's going to be one of those threads that you need someone to care about you more than you care about yourself throughout life. And my dad for me is that person. And I can't express to you how important that is. And then I just remember, driving home and not a word was said. And I remember not leaving my room for 3 or 4 days. I was so embarrassed to see anybody. And I was so afraid and scared to look anybody in the eye. And I had to go back to work. I was working construction. It was in the summer. I remember I just went back and I didn't tell anyone. So I was just, making up some sort of lie of why I didn't, come in for a few days. And I had really no idea what was going to happen, but I knew something was going to happen based off, the repercussions of my behavior. There was a lot of things happening behind the scenes which I had no idea about. And then, I'll never forget, it was 2 weeks, not even, from that incident, and we were just maybe a couple weeks before school was about to start, football season was about to start, all this stuff, and senior year, and I get a knock on my door like 2 or 3 in the morning, and this is my bedroom, and lights turn on, door opens, and there are 2 massive human beings that later to be named goons that were at my door, and I saw my dad in between them with the face that I unfortunately recognized from a couple weeks prior. And they said, you're coming with us, these 2 goons. And I looked at them, and obviously in a fog and a daze of confusion and disbelief of 2 a.m. wake up call, and it was I was like, well, no, I have to go to work. And they said, no, you're not going to work, you're going to Utah. And I was like, what? I'm not going to Utah, I'm going to work. And so I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I remember when I knew this was serious was when I went to the bathroom. They followed me into the bathroom, and as I took a leak, they kept one hand on my shoulder, And that was really how it went. I remember I went back to my room and they're like, what? I said, what should I pack? And they said, nothing, just put some clothes on. We have everything else you need. And with one finger through through the belt loop of my pants, walked out, got into a car that was unknown to me, and then we drove to the airport, which was 2 hours away from where I was living, and walked through an airport with two goons, hand on my shoulder and hand around my belt loops, and they sat next to me on the plane. They had their hand over my seatbelt the whole time, and we flew to Utah, to Second Nature, where I spent a lot of time out in the woods. And that's about 20 minutes or so that's a good place to stop. We'll kind of break down what that looks like, but that's sort of part one of sort of one of the bigger moments of my life, if not the biggest moment of my life. Unfortunately, matches, if not is, on par with the other few lows that I was still ahead of me in my life. Life is a lot of peaks and valleys, and I had a lot of valleys and not a lot of peaks for a couple years, and or false peaks and even deeper valleys. And but hopefully that this is a good place to pause. Hopefully, if you guys have questions, let me know. It means a lot to me to be able to share this, and hopefully it can bring some insight to just who I am, what I do, and why I do it, and why I live the life that I live. And these are some of the things that in my life have shaped who I am, and also, why I try to embody certain values every day and with people I interact with. So hopefully this, you find some value in this. If not, that's all right, but I appreciate it. Little different style, but we'll pick this back up when we have some time. But let me know if you have questions. Really appreciate you guys listening. The Soapbox, Austin Malleolo, part one of the life story.